Hi guys, in this video you will learn how to play the fried liver attack and as well as learn how to counter it. The fried liver attack is mainly to favor white, so let's get right into it. After pawn to e4 by white, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6 defending this pawn, bishop to c4. Their attention is now placed on f7 pawn. The bishop frees f1 so the king can castle early in the game through the king side. If knight to f6, in this position we can successfully launch knight to g5. Once you can achieve this position, that means you are halfway to achieve the fried liver attack. The bishop and the knight join forces to pressure f7 pawn. Most beginners in a hurry play h6. This gives rise to this first variation where knight takes pawn, attacking the queen and the rook. The knight is defended by the bishop, so black has nothing to do on the knight, but has to save one of these two pieces. If black saves the queen to e7, then you can go ahead to capture the rook. This is a successful beginner's variation for the fried liver attack. If your opponent is experienced, he or she won't play h6 in a hurry. Would find a counter move by playing d5. Take this pawn. If knight takes the pawn, you can apply a little technicality to your variation from here by sacrificing the knight on f7 after taking the pawn. This is basically asking black, what do you love to do in this position? If you leave the knight, I'm going to capture one of these two strong pieces. So most likely played is king takes knight. This move already take away the ability for the black king to castle in the future. The king is now open to attack from the queen through this diagonal, either to f3 or h5. So let's attack the king by going to f3 with the queen. Queen checks the king from here. If the king runs to g8, then queen takes knight, check to the king, queen takes queen, bishop takes the queen, bishop blocks, bishop take bishop, checkmate. In this position, there are other squares the king can go to. We've just seen king to g8. There is king moving over to e8. There is e7. There is e6. There is also g6. In addition, queen can also block this check. The knight cannot move because the knight is pinned to the king by the bishop. If the king goes here, we can simply take the knight first. The threat is still on the board where we can play pawn push and launch the bishop so we can attack the queen. If king moves up to e8, we can as well take the knight with the bishop from this position. Since the pressure is on this knight, a beginner might try to defend with this particular bishop. That gives room to queen to f7, and that's checkmate. Same idea goes for taking the knight away and putting the knight here on d4, so we can attack one of the attacker of black territory. However, this move also gives room to white so that white can play queen to f7, checkmate. In this position, an experienced player would not play those replies which involve knight to d4 and bishop to d7. He might go for queen to this particular square so he can monitor this c6 and also keep eye on defending f7. All you need to do is you can just simply play c3. Either you play c3 or you castle your king to safety and prepare to launch attack. In this case, if knight to d4, then we can simply play queen to e4 so queen can defend this particular pawn. If c6, bishop can go back home. The game can continue from here. For the compensation of your knight sacrifice, this king cannot be castled to safety, so you can easily find a way to attack further. After queen to f3 check, let's consider one technical reply which involves king coming down here to support in defense. That is king to e6. What you need to do now is to increase pressure on d5 by playing knight to c3. Since the knight is pinned, we have 3 attackers, only 2 defenders. Sometimes the king is considered a weak defender in some cases because there are some capture the king cannot do when pieces are much. So, how can black increase defender on this square? Black can either go with knight to e7 or knight to b4. Knight to b4 is one of the most played move. So, you can as well castle your king to safety. If c6 still supporting and defending the knight in the center, we can go with d4. If pawn takes, bishop should take knight, knight takes, we can unleash rook to e1, check. King goes into hiding to d6. We can launch bishop to g5. This move is tricky and technical because if queen takes, knight moves to e4, attacks the king and the queen. That is the full power of the fried liver attack. So black might spot this and play bishop blocking instead. Take the bishop. The knight will take because the queen cannot take. If the queen takes, rook takes the queen. So from here, we can simply throw in a sneaky check first, going after this pawn. If king goes here, we can increase pressure in the center by playing rook to d1, which pins the pawn to the king, threatening to take the pawn and check the king, take the queen. If c5, break the connection with b4. If b6, you take, mobilize your rook to e5. If queen comes in to pin the rook to the queen, simply sacrifice the rook. If the king takes, we can unleash knight to d5, which checks the king and the queen. Moreover, you can just go ahead to capture the queen with the queen. We check to the king and the game can continue from here. So guys, we have just seen how to play the fried liver attack successfully. We have seen responses by black playing pawn to h6 and also playing pawn to d5. We have seen continuations that really favored white in those variations. In this continuation, we are going to see how to counter the fried liver attack with the Traxler counter gambit. In this position here, you have to remember this particular move, bishop to c5. Bishop to c5 is this move that starts and give room for the counter. And it happens like this, where white still go for his plan by taking this pawn on f7, attacking the queen and the rook. Do not panic because you have a beautiful bishop takes pawn check. Most played move is king taking the bishop. That gives room for black to execute knight takes pawn check to the king. There are many places the king can go to, such as coming up to f3, going to e3, even going to e2 and coming down. However, let's take king to e3 as a consideration. Queen should come out to h4, defending that knight and preparing to create some kind of checkmate. In this position, if white still go ahead to capture this rook, queen to f4 check, king to e2, queen to f2 check, king to d3, knight to b4 check, king takes the knight on e4, queen to f4 is checkmate. However, after queen to h4, if white tries to attack the queen further, we can as well sacrifice this knight by taking this pawn on g3, as well as opening an attack through to this particular bishop here on c4. If pawn takes, attacking the queen twice from the pawn and from the rook, you can as well throw in a sneaky queen to d4 check first. If the king goes to f3, we castle. In this position, the knight is pinned to the king. The bishop is under attack, knight is under attack. The king is safe. We are winning back materials, and at the same time, this counter has worked to this extent. If rook to h4, trying to defend that particular bishop and kicking the queen away, you can go on with e4 check. If king to g2, queen takes the bishop on t4. This is one variation we can play in the Traxler counter gambit. In this position, you may be thinking the rook can take the pawn. Do not forget, this knight is pinned to the king. There can be knight to e5 check. If the rook takes the knight, queen can go ahead to take the rook on e5. However, if white stays close to the rook by moving the king up, you can as well throw pawn to g5. So if the king takes, queen takes the rook. If the king decides to still hold on to the rook and go up to f5, you can unleash pawn to d5, opening a discovered attack from the bishop to the king. If king to f6, then we can take this particular rook, or rook takes knight is simply winning. This white king is way too exposed. With the right combination and continuation, there can be a checkmate in this position against white. In this position here, if white decides to keep the bishop back, still holding on to defending this knight, and as well as avoiding any kind of exposed attack on the bishop, then we can throw a simple queen to f4 check. If the king comes down here, knight to d4 check follows. Where can the king go to? If king eventually goes up to d3, then we can simply pick up the queen after knight to f2 check. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, do not forget to support my channel by liking the content and sharing with your friends. See you in next video on this channel.